Welcome back to Miles Reads. I'm Miles. Today we're diving into the book Peak, Secrets from the New Science of Expertise. You've probably heard of the 10,000 hour rule, the popular idea that it takes 10,000 hours of practice to become a genius. But as it turns out, this concept isn't a universal truth. The author of Peak, Anders Ericsson, tells us that the 10,000 hour benchmark only holds true when it's built on a foundation of deliberate practice. Ericsson is a professor of psychology at Florida State University and the originator of the deliberate practice framework. His research focuses on how exceptional individuals across various fields from sports and music to chess, medicine, and the military achieve their outstanding performance. He discovered one common thread linking them all. They all follow the principles of deliberate practice. When Peak was released in 2016, it became an instant bestseller. As someone who studies knowledge management, I can say that of all the books on effective learning I've read, Peak offers the most profound and thorough explanation of what effective training truly is. It clarifies concepts that are often fuzzy and even shatters some of our most deeply held beliefs about learning. In my view, this book is destined to become a classic in the field. The book presents three core ideas that are truly eye-opening. First, how can training create a genius? Isn't genius something you're born with? Second, practice can be either effective or ineffective. How do we tell the difference? Third, the most powerful and effective learning method we've discovered is deliberate practice. So what exactly is it? Let's break down these 3 points one by one. First, why is it that training can forge a genius? Mozart is universally hailed as a musical prodigy, stunning the world with a major concert at the age of 7. Even more astonishingly, by age 4, he could identify the pitch of any sound, from the chime of a clock to the sound of a sneeze. This ability, known as perfect pitch, is incredibly rare, found in roughly 1 in every 10,000 people. For this reason, Mozart has always been the prime example of innate talent. It seems that geniuses are simply born different. But is that really the case? In 2014, a Japanese psychologist conducted an experiment with 24 children between the ages of 2 and 6. After 1 year of training, every single one of them had developed perfect pitch. This proves that with the right training, ordinary people can achieve genius-level performance. In fact, the author argues that Mozart's supposed gift was likely the result of training as well. His father began teaching him music full-time before he was 4, and the intensity of his training far surpassed that of the 24 children in the study. So, it was training that created the genius. We used to think that in certain fields, some people are just naturally gifted while others aren't. If you have talent, you just need to unlock your potential. If you don't, you could practice until you drop, and it wouldn't matter, you just don't have what it takes. We took it for granted that talent and genius were innate. However, the author shatters this belief. He points out that what we call potential can actually be created through training, much like how running builds muscle. With the right methods, you can train yourself to have potential. This idea completely upends our conventional wisdom. The author explains that the human body and brain are incredibly adaptable. Through targeted training, we can change our physical and mental capacities. For example, what do you think is the limit for consecutive push-ups? 500? 1,000? In 1980, a man from Japan did 10,507. But it gets even more incredible. In 1993, an American spent 21 hours doing 46,001 push-ups. Where are the true limits of the human body? Through training, our physical potential can be pushed to astonishing heights. The same is true for the brain. With deliberate practice, the brain can develop abilities it never had before. London's street system is so complex that even GPS can get confused. The best way to get around is by taxi. But becoming a London taxi driver is incredibly difficult. You have to pass a test known as the knowledge, arguably the hardest taxi test in the world. Studies have shown that drivers who undergo the intense training and pass the exam have a significantly larger hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for navigation. The training physically changed the structure of their brains. A similar phenomenon occurs with blind individuals. After they begin training to read Braille with their fingertips, the corresponding areas in their brains become more developed. The author's conclusion is clear. We can use extensive training to change our body's and brain's adaptability, thereby creating potential, nurturing talent, and forging genius. At this point, you might be asking, I've been in school and training my whole life. How come I wasn't trained to be a genius? The author's answer is that you are likely using the wrong kind of practice. Practice can be effective or ineffective, and most of us are stuck in a cycle of the latter. This brings us to the author's second major insight: how to distinguish between effective and ineffective practice. Picture this. A child is practicing the piano. A teacher walks over and asks, I see you practicing every day. Can you tell me why you fail every test? The student replies, I don't know. I practice every day. How many times a day do you practice the piece? The teacher asks. 10 to 20 times, I guess. And how many of those times do you play it correctly? I don't know. Maybe once or twice. The teacher presses on. So how exactly are you practicing? I'm just practicing. Over and over. Does this sound familiar? We spend countless hours doing homework, solving problems, running, or playing chess, yet we don't become top students, elite athletes, or chess masters. Why? The author explains that this is because we engage in naive practice. We're putting in the time, but it's not effective training. In fact, we hold 3 common misconceptions about practice. The first is that practice has its limits and our abilities are largely determined by our genes. We often hear people say, I'm just naturally bad with directions, or I'm not a math person, or my spatial reasoning is weak, I can't get any better. But the author argues that anyone can improve with the right training. It all comes down to mindset. The second misconception is that if you just practice long enough, you'll naturally get better. The author points out that simply putting in the hours doesn't guarantee results. Just think of the amateur who's played chess at the local park for decades, but never improves. Repeating the same thing in the same way won't lead to improvement sometimes. It can even cause your skills to stagnate or slowly decline. The third misconception is that working harder is the key to improvement. For example, to be a better manager, I need to sell more products and build a more cohesive team, so I just need to work twice as hard. This thinking isn't entirely wrong, but without a specific and appropriate training method, even doubling your effort is unlikely to lead to significant progress. Think back to school. There was always that one student who studied harder than anyone else, but whose grades never reflected their effort. Effective practice is not about logging more hours or more repetitions. It's about practicing the right way. So what is the right way? The author introduces a crucial concept: purposeful practice. What does that mean? Let's go back to the piano student. Imagine if his practice session looked like this. First, he sets a clear, specific goal. For instance, play the entire piece 3 times in a row at the correct tempo with 0 mistakes. If he fails to meet this standard, he stops, identifies the cause of the error, and starts again. Imagine if he trained with this level of intention every day. Wouldn't his progress be much faster? So, purposeful practice is first and foremost a practice of continuous improvement, turning small wins into major victories. Second, it requires intense focus. You can't be distracted. We are often just doing things without truly thinking about them. As Sherlock Holmes said, you see, but you do not observe. Furthermore, purposeful practice requires immediate feedback. If you complete a set of problems without knowing whether you got them right or wrong, your progress will be painfully slow. Finally, and most critically, you must practice outside your comfort zone. An amateur pianist who has been playing the same familiar songs the same way for 30 years will never become a master, even if he's logged 10,000 hours. He has never pushed beyond his comfort zone, making his practice incredibly inefficient. Therefore, purposeful practice is fundamentally about pushing your limits at the edge of your comfort zone. That is the only way to improve rapidly. So, is purposeful practice all it takes to become a genius? Not quite, says the author. While it's highly effective, reaching a world-class level requires an even more powerful method: deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is a form of purposeful practice. but it's the most effective method for skill improvement ever identified. This is the third key insight from the book. Before we define it, ask yourself, were we actually training when we practice? Is it speed? Musicality? Technique? The author says it's none of these. What we are really training is our mental representations. This is a term from cognitive psychology that refers to the mental structures we use to understand the world. It sounds abstract, so here's an example. To a novice chess player, the board is just a collection of pieces moving around. But to a grandmaster, the board reveals a story. He sees the shifting advantages, anticipates future moves, analyzes his opponent's strategy, and visualizes multiple counter-strategies. The difference isn't just what they see, it's the cognitive structure, the mental representation they use to process the information. Experts are able to chunk vast amounts of complex information into mental modules, which they then use to think and solve problems. When they encounter a new situation, they can instantly retrieve the relevant mental modules, allowing them to think more efficiently. Take soccer. A novice spectator sees 22 people running around chaotically, chasing a ball, but a professional player sees patterns. In one study, professional players watched videos of a real game. The video was paused the instant a player received a pass, and the test subjects were asked, "What will this player do next? Dribble, shoot, or pass?" The study found that the more elite the player, the more accurately they could predict the next move. This shows that the key difference between professionals and amateurs lies in the quality of their mental representations. Understanding this is key to understanding the goal of deliberate practice. Its ultimate purpose is to build more powerful and effective mental representations for thinking about and solving problems. And deliberate practice is the most efficient way we know to build them. So, what are the strict criteria for deliberate practice? There are two. First, the field you are training in must be well developed, with established standards of performance and effective training methods. Second, you must have an excellent coach or mentor who could design practice tasks and provide immediate, expert feedback. Only when both conditions are met can it be called true, deliberate practice. Very few fields meet this standard. Think of chess, ballet, gymnastics, and classical music. The violin is a perfect example. Its performance techniques are highly standardized, and its training methods have been refined over centuries. If you find a great teacher, they can show you the correct and often the most efficient way to practice, such as how to move your bow arm for maximum effect. Figuring this out on your own could take years of trial and error, or you might never discover it. With an expert guide, progress is much faster. This is why fields like violin produce so many young prodigies. They have access to top-tier coaching and proven methods. With sustained, deliberate practice, they become geniuses in their field. However, most of us work in fields that don't have these clear standards. We often lack both proven training methodologies and dedicated coaches. So what should we do? The author suggests we can apply the principles of deliberate practice to the greatest extent possible. These principles include: first, define a clear, high-performance goal. What specific skill do you want to improve? Second, find the best experts, top performers, or even classic texts in your field. The goal is to compare your performance against their superior mental representations to get high-quality feedback. Third, study these top performers or successful case studies and analyze the reasons behind their success. Finally, dedicate focused time and energy to practice and refinement. These 4 steps may sound simple, but their effect can be transformative. During the early years of the Vietnam War, the U.S. Navy's fighter pilots had a dismal combat record. In the first 5 months of 1968, they shot down 6 enemy aircraft while losing 10 of their own. Even worse, they had fired 50 air-to-air missiles without a single hit. In response, the Navy launched a program to rapidly elevate its pilots to an elite level. This was the birth of the Top Gun program. Here's how it worked. First, they selected their absolute best pilots to serve as instructors, forming a red team that mimicked enemy tactics. Next, they selected the next tier of excellent pilots as students, the blue team. Then, they pitted them against each other in high-intensity, simulated dogfights. The experienced instructors consistently push the students to the brink of failure, forcing them to make critical decisions under the most intense, dangerous, and complex conditions. After each day's engagement, the instructors would immediately debrief the students, sharing how they analyzed the battle and made their decisions. The students would then devise new strategies to try the next day. This cycle of practice and feedback continued. By 1970, when these specially trained pilots returned to combat, their kill-to-loss ratio had skyrocketed to 12.5 to 1. The incredible success of Top Gun was built on the core principles of deliberate practice: a clear goal, expert mentors, training outside the comfort zone, immediate feedback, and relentless, high-intensity practice. You might be thinking, this sounds great, but I'm busy. I have a job and a family. How can I find huge blocks of time and a mentor? It seems too difficult. The author acknowledges this reality, but offers a solution. We can adopt a learn-while-you-work strategy, integrating the principles of deliberate practice into our daily routines. For example, sales skill is a type of tacit knowledge that's hard to teach directly. But a company called Blue Rabbit found a clever way to train its sales managers on the job using these principles. The company used to hold annual meetings with its top-performing senior sales managers to discuss strategy, but these meetings were often unproductive. So they tried a new approach. During the meeting, they would have one manager role play as a real client, while another tried to sell them a product. All the other senior managers acted as observers, evaluating the entire sales process. They provided feedback, pointing out what was done well, what could be improved, and sharing their own expert techniques. The next day, the manager would do another simulated sales call, receiving another round of feedback. The entire process was recorded, creating an invaluable library of training material that helped elevate the skills of the entire team. As you can see, this process didn't require anyone to stop working. By simply embedding the principles of deliberate practice into their existing work, they achieved tremendous results. But what if the skill you want to improve has no obvious mentors or brilliant colleagues to learn from? The author says that even without a mentor, you can still use excellent examples from books and case studies to apply the principles of deliberate practice. Benjamin Franklin had a limited formal education and struggled to write even simple, clear sentences. But he was determined to improve his writing. He came across a magazine called The Spectator and was so impressed by the quality of the articles that he set a goal to write just as well. But he didn't know the authors and had no way to get feedback. What did he do? He started by imitating. First, he focused on word choice and sentence structure. He would write a sentence his own way, then compare it to the original, asking, why did the author write it this way and I wrote it that way? What makes their version better? After a while, his vocabulary improved, but his writing still fell off. He realized the problem was with the overall structure and logic of his articles. So, he took the paragraphs from a Spectator article, jumbled them up, and tried to reconstruct the essay himself. He asked, if I were writing this, what would I say first? What comes next? Then he would compare his version to the original, analyzing the author's flow and organization. Through this constant process of deconstruction and practice, Benjamin Franklin became one of the most revered writers in American history. His Poor Richard's Almanac and autobiography are classics of American literature. He solved a problem many of us face. He wanted to improve, but didn't know any experts and couldn't afford a coach. By breaking down high-level examples, analyzing the keys to their success, and practicing relentlessly, he transformed his own abilities. There's one more extreme scenario. What if you're in a field with no classic text to study, where even the conventional wisdom might be wrong? In this case, the author says you must return to the essence of deliberate practice, creating a high-quality, efficient feedback loop between your actions and their outcomes. For example, radiologists in the U.S. diagnosed breast cancer by reading X-rays. But studies found that their accuracy did not significantly improve with years of experience. Sometimes it even declined. Why? A radiologist might look at 1,000 X-rays and only identify 4 to 8 cases of cancer. This means they get very few opportunities for meaningful feedback. Furthermore, Even if a radiologist suspects cancer, patient privacy laws mean the case is transferred to a private physician, and the radiologist often never learns if their diagnosis was correct. In this field, there is no effective way for doctors to rapidly improve their diagnostic skills. How could their abilities be enhanced? The author's proposed solution was to apply the principles of deliberate practice to strengthen the feedback loop between decision and outcome. The method was to create a curated training library of historical X-ray images with known outcomes. They specifically selected high-value feedback cases, such as those where a doctor initially saw no problem, but the patient later developed cancer, or cases that were initially diagnosed as cancerous but turned out to be benign. With this training library, doctors could now test their diagnostic skills on cases with known results. Instead of getting a handful of low-quality feedback opportunities per year, they could now engage in dozens of high-quality feedback sessions every single day. As a result, the diagnostic accuracy of radiologists improved dramatically, all by simply applying the principles of deliberate practice. In our daily jobs, we often face a similar dilemma. We might be a graphic designer or a programmer, working on just one small piece of a larger project. We often don't see how our work ultimately impacts the final result, causing our skills to plateau after a few years. The principle of deliberate practice teaches us that we must find ways to create a clear and effective link between our work and its final outcome. If I'm a graphic designer, I should actively seek to understand where my design was used in the final product. What did users think? What do they dislike? Why? Then, I can discuss potential improvements with colleagues and intentionally practice to enhance my skills. This is the essence of peak. The fastest way to grow in any domain is to get guidance and feedback from top performers. This allows you to learn the correct concepts and methods that have been distilled from years of valuable experience, dramatically increasing your learning efficiency. This is deliberate practice. It's why in a few specific fields, the combination of the best teachers, the right methods, and high-intensity training can mass-produce geniuses. Even if most of us aren't in those fields, we can still apply the principles of deliberate practice, study what exceptional people do, analyze the reasons for their success, and continuously experiment and improve based on those insights. That exceptional person could be a real-life mentor, the author of a book, or even an insight from an article. Find the top performers in your field, study what makes them successful, and put it into practice. That is the most important takeaway. All right, let's summarize. Peak presents three incredibly insightful ideas. First, genius is made, not born. Through intense and correct training methods, we can physically change the structure of our brains and bodies, producing abilities that seem almost like innate talent. Second, the reason most people don't become geniuses is that they engage in low efficiency or even ineffective practice. Only through purposeful practice, which requires focus, timely feedback, clear goals, and constantly pushing beyond our comfort zone, can we improve rapidly. Third, to reach an elite level, purposeful practice isn't enough. We must engage in deliberate practice by finding the best mentors to guide us, constantly analyzing the secrets to success, and training relentlessly to achieve the greatest breakthroughs. Congratulations on finishing this book summary. We'll see you next time.